Okay, folks, today we're going to talk about, the moon and eclipses. It's not seasons quite yet. We're going to do eclipses first. Okay, our moon is roughly a quarter of the size of the Earth. The gravity is 1/6 that of the Earth. And the oldest rocks on the moon date back 4.6 billion years. Anything on this slide that is underlined is what you're going to go ahead and copy down. I'm trying to keep the notes as short as possible. The moon does have drastic temperature changes. During the day, it's around 273 degrees Fahrenheit, and at nighttime, it's negative 244 degrees Fahrenheit. That's because the moon has no atmosphere. And the moon is actually moving. It has layers, the crust, the mantle, the core, and it actually has moonquakes every year, around 3,000 of them. Okay, the moon features you need to know are underlined. There are the highlands. The highlands are literally land that is high. It's the mountain ranges. These can soar thousands of meters into the sky. When we look at the moon, those light areas that you see are actually the highlands. The moon is made of rocks called anorthosites. You don't need to know that, but good Jeopardy question or answer in the future. Okay, the riles or rills, honestly, I'm not sure how to pronounce them. These are the long valleys that crisscross most of the surface, and there's a possibility that that is proof of volcanic activity in the past. It's thought to be leftover lava channels. And the maria are the dark areas on the moon. These are actually flat plains, and they're made of solidified lava. And they're dark because they reflect less light than the highlands. A crater is just a bowl-shaped depression. If you know that already, don't bother writing it down, okay? A crater is just a bowl-shaped depression. It's leftover debris from the solar system that struck the moon. Young craters have something called rays on them. If you look at this picture in the bottom right, you're going to see these white or light-colored streaks coming off from the crater in the center. Those are called rays, and those are indicative of young craters. And then the lunar surface is covered with crushed rock and dust, and that crushed rock and dust has a name. It's called regolith, and the depth varies from 1 to 6 meters deep. Okay, the moon has a near side and a far side because one side of the moon always faces Earth. It faces Earth because the moon rotates and revolves at the same exact rate. The crust. The near side is thinner than the far side. Like I said before, the moon has a mantle and has a small iron core, and lunar rocks are igneous. Right? They contain mostly oxygen and silicon. That's similar to those in our crust. The rocks do not contain any water vapor at all. Moon movement. Okay, we have something called apogee, A away. When the moon is at the farthest point in its orbit around the Earth, it's called apogee. It's when the moon is farthest away. Perigee is when the moon is at its closest point in its orbit around the Earth. And this is when we have like the harvest moon. It's when the moon looks really, really big. And that's because it's seriously just closer to us. Okay, the giant impact hypothesis is I can't think of what I'm looking for. Oh, it's the formation of the moon. Essentially, when the Earth was first created, a Mars-sized object hit the Earth. It blasted part of the mantle material out into space. That debris started revolving around the Earth, and eventually the material joined together and it formed our moon. Okay, I already said this one. The moon rotates and revolves at the same rate, so we always see the same side of the moon. 12 men have actually walked on our moon. The first two are Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, and they were in the lunar module named Eagle as part of the Apollo 11 mission. Moon phases, you need to draw them. I'm so sorry. You've seen these before. Most of you, I'd probably be willing to say 85% of you know these without even having to write them down, but I'm still looking for the pictures. When I collect the notes from you tomorrow, I'm actually collecting the pictures that you have to draw. Make sure you know that waxing means growing, and you wax on the right, like over here, okay? And waning means shrinking, and you wane on the left. And in this diagram, the light part is the part that you would see, the dark part is the part you would not see. Okay, what I want you to do is draw that picture of the solar eclipse. If you could draw it, it's pretty similar to how it is down here at the bottom with labeling everything. That's all you really need to know. Um, During a solar eclipse, the moon moves into position so that it blocks light from the sun. For us here on Earth, it appears to move in front of the sun. And the order for a solar eclipse is Sun, Moon, Earth. The next solar eclipse that's visible in the U.S. will be in 2017 and will last roughly 7 minutes. And the big thing you need to know besides Sun, Earth, Moon, or I'm sorry, yeah, Sun, Moon, Earth, is that this is when you would normally see the invisible outer layers of the sun. Lunar eclipse, same thing. Please draw this picture here at the bottom for me. During a lunar eclipse, the Earth moves into position so that it blocks sunlight to the moon, and it is Sun, Earth, Moon. I always think of it as Luna last, and the moon appears as a reddish color. Sometimes they call it a blood moon. Um, Personally, I think it looks more rusty to brown. I don't think it looks blood-like at all. Okay, if you wrote in those other two pictures the umbra and pun number, just ignore this one. You don't need to draw it. You do need to know that the umbra is the inner part of the shadow. It's where you can see a full eclipse. The pun number is the outer part of the shadow, and this is where you would see a partial eclipse. Okay, so eclipses can happen up to 7 times per year. However, since the moon's orbit lies outside of Earth's orbital plane, that means that the moon is not totally lined up with the Earth. It's a little off from our plane, so it's kind of at an angle. Total eclipses occur infrequently. The moon only crosses Earth's orbit twice in each revolution, so you only get a full eclipse if everything is lined up perfectly. If kind of like right here, when the yellow and the gray intersect, that's when you would get a full eclipse. If you get it over here where the yellow and the gray are separated, then you would get a partial eclipse. Okay, and this is just informational. I'm not going to test you on it. It's just interesting. And last thing you need is tides. Tides are just the rise and fall of the oceans due to the moon's gravitational pull on Earth. A spring tide happens when the moon is in the full or new phase. It's when the water springs forward, so you have a very high tide. A neap tide is when the moon is in either of the quarter phases, the first or last quarter, and the result is essentially really weak tides. You don't have a big jump um, in the tidal waters. And all you have to do is draw this and label it. Remember, I am collecting, or not collecting, I'm looking at all of your drawings specifically. I'm sorry I couldn't post this yesterday, and Moto's having all sorts of issues. Bye-bye.